Hi guys, welcome to the new video. This is more of a sporadic one. I'm still editing the one with film updates, which you want to see, but I decided to jump on the bandwagon of the Force Awakens 10th anniversary, and I want to tell you my story. For starters, you can see quite a new update. A fellow fan, Philip from Munich, reached out to me after my latest video, and he had a Blue Yeti mic to give away, so thank you Philip, you're the best, and so is my new sound. So sit back, strap in, and what follows is basically the origin story of Trials of the Master. As some of you already know, I became a fan in 2007, when I was 12, and that was just a bit too late for me to experience the entire prequel trilogy hype, and especially the one around Revenge of the Sith. And even though I had an awesome childhood, when it comes to Star Wars, those were basically the dark times for me because I had nothing new to look forward to. Look, I'm from a small town in Croatia, and back then we didn't even have a dedicated toy store in my town, and the stores that did sell toys in my town didn't even have anything Star Wars related. So early on I had to make my own hand-built models and replicas, which, I mean, looking back, was probably beneficial for my creativity. But as a kid, it was very frustrating at the time. Not the model making part, but the fact that we couldn't buy anything in store. And all we really had were the films, a couple of library books, and the video games which I used to play with my friends. And with nothing new being announced, that was enough for us. So when Disney announced that they're buying Lucasfilm and that there will be Episode 7 in theaters, I told myself I will finally experience the real Star Wars hype. I will see it many times in the theater, I will build a proper Star Wars collection from the available merch, and of course I will wear a costume to the premiere. And the best part is, since I was dating my future wife, there was nobody who could judge me for any of it. Now, fast forward to 2014. I just graduated high school, and I moved to the capital of Croatia, Zagreb, to study film editing at the Academy of Dramatic Art. When it comes to Star Wars, I followed every leak and behind the scenes clip from the making of Episode 7, and then in November of that year we got that first teaser. I still remember the moment when it dropped. I was on the public transport on my way to the Academy, and I told myself I will not watch it on my phone, I will see it on the big screen when I get there. And even though it's a 20 minutes drive, I couldn't resist in the end and I saw it on my phone. And honestly, I mean, what can I say? It looked good. It looked natural, it looked organic, BB-8 was an instant hit, it fit in that universe right in, and of course it was controversial because of that crossguard lightsaber. I honestly didn't mind that crossguard lightsaber thing. It was something new, it looked cool, and I went with it. And looking back at it, that was the least of the problems that fans should have with this film. And that brings us to the winter of 2014, when I made a decision that changed my life. And I'm not being dramatic, it really did. And in fact, it made a direct impact on creation of Trials of the Master in the end. Now to explain that, I need to take you back to 2008 when I was still 12, and I decided to make a Darth Vader costume for the school carnival. It took me around 2 months to do it, Grandma helped me with the sewing parts, and honestly, for my age, it didn't look that bad, and I kept improving it with time, and eventually I sold it when I started high school. So now we're back to that winter of 2014, and I decided I wanna do it all over again. But this time I wanted to do it properly, fully screen accurate and ready in time for the Force Awakens premiere. Now there was just one tiny problem. You see, I was a student back then, and that meant I didn't have a lot of money. And that meant that buying finished costume props, like the ones used by, for example, 501st members, that was completely out of reach for me. Now luckily, thanks to my history with Star Wars prop and model making, I'm pretty handy, and that meant I'm going to do the whole costume from scratch all over again. So I started researching and working on the costume in the early 2015, and in that process I took a lot of work in progress photos. And then I started publishing all of it on the Croatian Star Wars fan forum. And the response there was amazing. People were incredibly supportive, and... Why am I getting a deja vu here? Around that same time in the spring, we got our second teaser for The Force Awakens, the one with the long shot of the speeder in the distance and the reveal of the Star Destroyer wreckage. And to this day, this is still my favorite teaser or trailer for any live-action project, and honestly I like it even more than the full trailer that we got later in the fall. And yeah, even rewatching it today still makes me emotional. Later that year, somewhere at the end of the summer, Croatian Star Wars fan community started having a meetups, and of course they invited me as well. Now, I've said that this costume project changed my life and it directly impacted the creation of Trials of the Master. Here's why. To simply put it, I'm an introvert, and you will never see me walking up to a large group of people saying, "Hey guys, can I hang out with you?" That's a hard no in my book, and if you want me around, I'm basically like a vampire, you have to invite me in. So I went to that meetup, and for the first time ever, I felt like I finally found my people. Now, growing up in my hometown, of course I had my group of friends, but we all had different interests, and I honestly thought that once I got to the academy, it will be a filmmaking Hogwarts and I fit there right in. And that turned out not to be the case. Don't get me wrong, I had a wonderful time there, made a lot of friends, even started my visual effects career, but I often felt like an outsider, because almost nobody there shared my taste in films. Many students were art snobs and they looked down on anything even remotely Hollywood or commercially related, so I learned to stay quiet during the most of the film discussions we had there. And that's why everything clicked the moment I went to that fan meetup. The best part was how normal everyone felt, and I was probably the youngest person there. These were people with jobs, with families, with careers, from different walks of life, but we all spoke the same language when it came to Star Wars. And yes, some of them made the key contributions to Trials of the Master. I mean, and they called me Vader the whole time, so that was awesome. And that brings us to the fall of 2015, just 2 months before the premiere of TFA. I had finished all the hard parts of the costume, and now I needed a bit of help with the cape and undersuit, because I never had any experience working with fabric on that scale of complexity. Now, luckily, through one of Academy projects nonetheless, I met an amazing costume designer who was willing to help me with it. While she was working on the costume, she casually told me that she has a friend. And that guy is a fight choreographer, he's a fencer, film buff, and even a part-time costume designer. She also told me that he met and worked with Bob Anderson, the fight choreographer from the OT and Vader's stunt double, and she told me that he wants to meet me. And my response was very simple. If someone can casually name Darth Vader's stunt double from the OT, hell yeah, I wanna meet that person. Fast forward 10 years, he's my best friend, the best man at my wedding, and the second in command on Trials of the Master. And none of this would have happened if I hadn't decided to build that costume. And finally, we reached December of 2015, we finished the costume on December 6th, and it exceeded every single expectation that we had. So just to reiterate, I decided to make a cool thing in my free time. I posted VIP photos online. Star Wars fans were hyped about it. And then I finished it, and then it was better than anyone expected. I'm talking of course about my Darth Vader costume. Or am I? We then had about 10 days, 10 very busy days, filled with fan events, film promotions and troopings, and the reaction from the crowd was unbelievable. Everyone wanted a photo with me, Vader, and the hype for the film was through the roof. And then we saw the film. I mean, what can I say? Yeah, we liked it. Watching it was certainly a great fan experience. I didn't think it was possible, but we walked out of the film with more questions than we had going in, and many of the questions we did have weren't answered at all. There was a huge elephant in the room, and it felt a lot like a rework of A New Hope / reboot. At the time though, I had an explanation for myself. I told myself, they're doing this on purpose, they're proving that they can make a classic Star Wars, and they will surely surprise us later. Boy, was I somehow both right and wrong at the same time. Also, call me crazy, but every Star Wars film starts with the main theme, and this one starts in a strangely weak way. Those couple of first notes sounded very weak. For the record, my favorite rendition of the main theme is the opening crawl of episode 3. It starts with sharp and powerful notes, and that makes it feel epic instantly. That being said, after this musical blunder, the film has a strong start. Most of the humor works well, and that Star Wars feeling is certainly there. I didn't like what they did with Han. He's suddenly back to being a smuggler, so we're ignoring his entire character arc. We get another empire, just reskinned, the rebellion is still there under a different name, and the galaxy's whole political situation is very vague. Now, I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't be required to read a book to fully appreciate the film. Watch another film before the film, yes, but read a book where they explain to you something that shouldn't be required. We have a droid carrying important information, and there's another Death Star. Again. The Knights of Ren looked cool and interesting, and I like the concept of Finn as a character. Now try to imagine my disappointment with the treatment of those characters in the later films. Now what really kept me invested was believing that they would resolve all those plot threads in the later films, and that's what kept me on board. Because of that, I kept the promise to myself and I saw it 9 times in the theater. I mean, it was my first new Star Wars film, what did you expect? After that, I didn't rewatch it again for years. I mean, 9 times was enough. Until about 2 years ago. There was a Force Awakens in concert event in my town here in Germany, and my wife and I decided to go. By then, after the entire sequel trilogy, my fondness for that film was mostly gone. But I mean, hearing John Williams' music live with an orchestra, as a Star Wars fan, you can't really say no to that. So here we are, watching it again, listening to the wonderful music, and I'm realizing that I'm getting more and more irritated. Watching it again, I realized how much they were baiting us with plot ideas that they never resolved or never planned to resolve. Characters asking, who's the girl? What girl? All the while knowing that the writers didn't know that answer as well. That was very frustrating. Maz Kanata saying, good question, for another time, when there was clearly no plan for any of it whatsoever. Then the next director comes, he chooses to ignore all of this, and he goes in a completely another direction. And I just can't respect that kind of approach to storytelling. I could say a lot more about my feelings for the sequel trilogy, but my biggest issue is simple. There was no plan. When I sit down to watch Star Wars, I expect to see a good story, and I expect to be inspired by it. There was no story, and I wasn't inspired. I don't hate the sequels. I don't hate people who made sequels, but in those rare times when I have time to watch a film or two, I'd literally watch anything else but the sequel trilogy. So what's the legacy of The Force Awakens up until now? When the prequels came out, fans had many issues with them, sure, but Episode 3 was pretty well regarded back then. 10 years later, in 2015, it was still a fan favorite, and in 2025, people still flocked to the theaters to see it. Episode 7 seems to be going in the opposite direction. It was liked at first, now not so much. And because the following film made its setup non-important, the entire film now seems less important. To me it feels like if you are driving down a beautiful street full of wonderful houses, and then at the end of that street you see a house with solid concrete foundation, and then every level was built in a different style. You will never say, oh, the style doesn't work but the foundations are solid. No, you're gonna say the building sucks. Oh, and by the way, those foundations look the same like the third house next to it. But hey, I did end up using some of the sequels footage for the basis of the shots in Trials of the Master, so at least something good came out of it. And honestly, there are far more positive things that matter to me way more than some sci-fi film made for profit. Watching The Force Awakens with my dad finally inspired him to watch the original trilogy as well. He'd never seen it before, so we ended up watching all 3 films in one day, and that means a lot to me. I also joined the 501st Legion as Darth Vader at the end of 2015. I went to Star Wars Celebration in London in 2016, and I went there with a friend I met at the Star Wars Club in Croatia. Speaking of Croatia, they filmed the parts of The Last Jedi in Croatia in the early 2016, and we even visited the set while they were filming it. Turned out it was the Canto Bight sequence, but we still went there. Also, did you forget about all those people I met because of the sequel trilogy? And even to this day, those people are some of my dearest friends. So for me, you can freely say that the sequel trilogy was the friends I made along the way. So, when I decided to rework the Kenobi series in 2022, I quickly realized I needed extra shots to tell the story the way I want to tell it. So I lit my beacon, and my friends showed up. They handled props, costumes, makeup, hell, even catering. My best friend took care of lighting, filming, and helping me with the edit. And all of them gave their time and skills to make it happen. And that's my biggest takeaway from episode 7. So that's almost about it for this video. Thank you all for your support as always. Thank you to my Patreon members. I'm still editing film updates video, which will be here in a couple of days, and then a couple of days after that we'll do a live Q&A session here on YouTube, so you will not have to wait another month for me to update something new. And the question I get the most from the Star Wars fans is, will I, after I'm done with Trials of the Master, fix the sequel trilogy? And I can proudly say yes. Here you go.
Rey Skywalker.